Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and this week I want to look at the all-star context of the cards they replicated. I wasn't planning on doing this because the goal of last week was to spite ludicrousness, but Josie's comment got me thinking, and that complexity video I've been working on has been proving really challenging, so here we are again. Just like last week with the World Champs, we'll take a look at the all-star cards to see if they got better or worse in the new context, all the while acknowledging that Sir Errant is great. Let's start with Sprout. In the killer plant context, Sprout can only fetch water lilies, which are quantity locked. You can no longer farm Sprouts, not that you would in many cases anyway. Here, Sprout gets 6 new targets, although one of them doesn't really count, but the sheer volume of options is enough to make this an easy choice for being better. I think Servitor is easily better for a few reasons. I still don't understand why a Minion Star faction got 4 self-Sir Erranting minions, but they did. Cthulhu has some really impactful actions, but I think the all-star actions are individually more impactful, and it's a lot easier to spare one minion, especially if you have direct access to it in a normal minion spread. Fan is really weird because it's a non-card. It gives the geeks 36 cards, and you give the all-stars 39 cards. I think it means more to the geeks because those 3 extra cards really amps up the threat level and makes the specials an inevitability, so Fan is slightly worse even though it's problematic in either case, that you can sack a Servitor for an action on top of your deck and immediately draw it with Fan. Ensign is a lot like Brownie in that its value is entirely dependent on your rivals, and they very often are dead. Having one card like Ensign makes it easier to trigger because you only have to deal with it once, but Ensign also loses the saving potential of Ship's Engineer and Medical Officer. However, you are likely only triggering Ensign if you don't have those cards, because you'd be less likely to fear being affected even though Ensign offers protection from moving and things beyond destruction. This is really hard to wrap my head around, but my gut says that Ensign is often dead, so less dead cards are better, and I'm still not sure why this is here other than there being no other option. Puck is a great card in both contexts, but which is better? It naturally comes down to what cards you are drawing and what actions you are playing. Fairy actions outside of enchantment don't have much of a punch, while the all-star actions do. You also trade quantity of pucks for direct access to them, and Puck as an extra play in the all-star context can generate some powerful combos. So I think Puck is easily better in the all-star context. Imperial Dragon is a card that draws its power from quantity. The more of them you have, the more ground you can cover and thus trigger one of them. As the saying goes, area control doesn't scale easily, so dropping an area control quantity is likely to be worse. But even more than that, you lack the other dragon tools to help funnel you to a base with Imperial Dragon, even if you only have one out, so this is a worse fit overall, but I still think it's a good fit because if I can get one card draw that is still good value for its slot, and it draws plenty of aggro. Lab Assistant was another odd one, because the mad scientists don't exactly need power counters, they have them. The only card that needs them is the monster, but there are many other ways to fuel the monster. For Lab Assistant, the weird part is that Lab Assistants force themselves to be the second minion, as they can never power themselves, which means that you have an easier time playing minions when fewer of them have an order of operations limitation. That alone makes me think that Lab Assistant is a better fit here, even though it is not aligned with the overarching all-star strategy. Granny was hard because I had to consider this with and without the Titan. With the Titan, you are setting up Titan plays, but the Granny, Titan, and I are in a timeout, like Captain Cosmic and I are in a timeout, but Grannies have very few cards worth sifting through, while All-Stars have tons of upper echelon cards, and you can remove the aspect of item potence, so I really do think Granny is better in the All-Star context, but I wouldn't blame anyone for saying that the Great Grandma changes everything and puts it better in the Granny context. Gelf was really tricky, because the best context for Gelf is both of these factions together. There are those who think Gelf is bad, that trading down for shapeshifted minions is bad, and I just disagree. Mimics can potentially trade up in power, especially if a King Rex type is out, and copycats can be MVPs against the right deck. The problem is, what are the all-stars trading down to? Puck is a great target. I don't think you trade down for an Imperial Dragon. Lab Assistant just replaces the power at best. You wouldn't trade down for a Sprout because that wastes a turn and a minion. You could argue Servitor, but that feels harsh, and definitely not Fan or Ensign. So while Gelf draws a lot of value from the partner, I do think that the fewer shapeshifter choices are still better overall than the more all-star choices, making this a worse fit overall. King Rex's entire ability is printed power, so which faction uses it better? With dinosaurs, you get 11 or 14 power plays with 2 cards, and that is certainly great. With all-stars, you don't really get that single big 2-card play, but you get better access to King Rex and the recursion of it. I think if you play Dinosaurs, you are lucky if you get King Rex, but if you play All-Stars, it feels inevitable unless you've already won the game. So I have to believe that King Rex is better here, not because of ability, but because of supporting context. Moving on to the actions, for a card like Begin the Summoning, it's a question of what are you recurring. While you lose one copy from Elder Things, you technically have 3 copies thanks to the other All-Star cards. So this is basically a question of do you want King Rex or Elder Thing? And if you played Rank It Up 2 weeks ago when I lost my voice for the billionth time this winter, you'd know I'd take King Rex, so I'd also take the All-Star context. In the spirit of extreme laziness, I am treating Ghostly Arrival, It's Astounding, and Non-Infinite Loop as a trio, and I think it's absurd that these 3 cards got paired together. Individually, their new context is just better, with Non-Infinite Loop being the possible lone holdout because of Control Minion, but together this is just silly. The rest of the actions are much harder. Favor of Dionysius isn't really that good outside the Mythic Greeks context, with great effect, but it also gives them negative card draw. But consider this. All-Stars aren't incentivized to play it every turn, so they pass on incremental benefits, but also aren't punishing their draw. They can use it for free power, and they can draw it back with Square Deal, or they can bury it with Granny. They can play it twice with Puck. It feels insane to say this, but I think I actually like it better in the All-Star context, where it is streamlined and doesn't feel as punishing, and isn't absorbing most of your attention. It definitely goes under the radar as a perpetual finish booster, but I won't blame anyone who disagrees and picks the Greek context because of Odysseus and Heracles. With Friendship Power, I don't think I actually play this card very often with Mythic Horses. You need minions on 2 bases, and they don't really incentivize that, so lately it's felt like a better card on paper than in reality. Purely for that reason, because All-Stars will more naturally spread, I like it better here. It's also their only movement card, so it isn't competing with better options. Full Moon I actually like better for Werewolves. Their persistent power plays nicely into marking territory and their specials power. This is definitely a card that fits in a lot of contexts. Werewolves don't have a swarm potential while the All-Stars do, and I think you could make an argument that playing 4 minions in a turn than Full Moon is a big swing. But that's using all your bullets for 1 base, and I think Full Moon does more for Werewolves. I could probably call this even, but my gut still says Werewolves like it better because it pushes the partner choose into range of Frenzy with the Great Talent Killer. As a Destruction card, I like seeing stars better when Destruction is rare. Ninjas really struggle to win the war of attrition they create, whereas All-Stars can play 4 minions then kill your 1 minion for an easy solo. This is easily a better context. Square Deal was really tough, because you have to consider how many cards am I drawing and what cards am I drawing. My Teddy Bear bias also has to be considered. With the Teddy Bears, you are playing a bunch of weak cards then drawing back up, like after Sir Squeezes and Snugglies. So if you played weaker cards like Snugglies, what you are drawing back is likely your better cards in the deck. But outside of Love Overload, what Teddy Bear cards am I excited to draw? With All-Stars, I think you play this after playing a bunch of your good cards, but what remains is still better on average. And if you are playing this to draw into your better cards in each scenario, I take the All-Stars package over the Teddy Bears package. But those who know me know I am not a Teddy fan, so if you think they have the better context, let me know in the comments. Finally, we have Prepare for Battle, which I actually think is among the worst cards in the game. It's action draw a card, when there are cards that draw 2 cards, and I don't even like those. And you are compelled to bury what could be a good card. I had to think long and hard about how to evaluate this terrible card. I don't think it's about what you draw, I think it's about what you're forced to bury. In other words, if all of your cards are good, this card is a worse fit. To be a better fit, you'd have to have a greater chance of having bad cards you'd want to bury. So who has more bad cards that make this a better card? This is crazy that I have to approach it like this. All-Stars have better cards overall, so this card is a worse fit because it hurts you more, and by having more bad cards, this card would be better. Obligatory bad is a terrible thing. They must have really been hurting for options if this made it into All-Stars. This time around, I have 15 cards that are better in the All-Star context, 5 that are worse, and none that are even. That is a striking distance, and maybe one of the reasons why All-Stars are considered to be a little much. As I said last week, I've really soured on the format overall, as it seems like you have to be feeling particularly inspired to make it work and seem fair. It can't really be a collection of All-Star cards, because if you take great cards and give them a better context, it's not going to be balanced. How do you assess each of these cards? Does any card stand out to you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.